Long before candy and costumes, there were offerings and prayers. What we call Halloween began with people honoring the dead, with light, with song, and with food left by the door. Now, there's an old belief that this time of year, the nights between October and November, belong to the dead. When the harvest was finished and the fields went quiet, people said the line between our world and theirs grew thin. For centuries, they marked that moment with small acts of remembrance, candles in windows, a whispered prayer, a simple gift of bread for any spirit still wandering. And one of those offerings became something we still remember today, small round spice cakes called soul cakes. But the custom likely traces back even further to the Druids. The Druids believed this was the turning of the year, when ancestral spirits walked among the living. Bonfires burned on the hills to guide them home, and food was left outside as a gesture of respect for those who'd passed on. When Christianity spread through the British Isles, these old customs weren't erased, they were adapted. The church gave the season new meaning: All Hallows Eve, All Saints' Day, and All Souls' Day, a time to pray for the departed. And so the offering evolved into the soul cake. During All Hallowtide, the poor and children went door to door singing hymns and offering prayers for the souls of the dead in exchange for these little cakes. It was called souling. Each cake given was said to free one soul from purgatory. The cakes themselves were simple: flour, butter, sugar, and warm spices like nutmeg and allspice, each one marked with a cross to bless the souls it represented. The exchange carried meaning on both sides. The giver earned mercy and goodwill for their deed, and the receiver gained food for the purpose through prayer. It was a ritual of charity, remembrance, and hope, all baked into one humble offering. And centuries before plastic pumpkins and candy bars, this was one of the first forms of trick-or-treating. The living and the dead connected through the simplest of exchanges, a sweet for a prayer. Historians see soul cakes as the bridge between two worlds, the pagan and the Christian, the living and the lost. And even now, the meaning still lingers. So when they're done, golden and warm, I'll leave one out by the door. Not out of fear, but out of respect. Because some traditions shouldn't be forgotten. Okay, and as the soul cakes bake, let's head up to my creepy little corner, because every good dessert deserves a scary story to go with it. Long before Halloween was about candy or orange plastic buckets, it was the night when people believed the dead could come home. Not to haunt, just to pass through. So they lit candles in windows, left doors cracked open, and set out food, bread, milk, and soul cakes. So any spirit passing by would know, hey, you're still remembered. But the legend I found isn't about the ones who were remembered. It's about the ones who were not. It happened in a small village in northern England. No one writes the name down anymore. But if you ask around the older parts of Yorkshire, someone will eventually nod and say, oh, that village. Back then, life was simple. A row of stone cottages, a church that leaned more than it stood, and fields broken up by low rock walls. People believed in God on Sundays, and in older things the rest of the week. In that village lived the Ashwick family. They weren't rich, but they weren't poor, just steady. They kept their door painted, their fences mended, and every year on All Hallows Eve, they baked soul cakes. They marked the little cross and said a prayer, set them outside their door before nightfall. And nothing ever bothered them, until that one year, they stopped. No one knows why. Some say the new priest called it superstition. Others say the Ashwicks had lost someone that year, and grief turned into bitterness. Whatever the reason, on that Halloween, they decided there'd be no candles, no prayers, and no soul cakes. Just a quiet dinner behind a locked door, and that was the night the knocking started. At first, it sounded like wind pressing a loose shutter, a dull tap. Then 3 clear knocks, slow, spaced out, like someone counting. Mr. Ashwick set his fork down, listened, and said it was probably a boy from the lane playing around. He didn't move. When the knocks stopped, the family laughed, nervous at their own worry, and went back to talking about the harvest. They were finishing the last of the roast when it came again. 3 knocks. Same pace, but a little heavier this time. Mrs. Ashwick stood, reached for the latch out of habit, and then stopped herself. No candle in the window meant no invitation. That was the old understanding, even for people who said they didn't believe anymore. She backed away from the door and told her husband to ignore it. They waited. The sound stopped. The oldest daughter made a joke to lighten the mood. Everyone forced a smile, but on the inside, they weren't laughing. They toasted to new ways. The youngest child asked if they could have a slice of sugared apple they'd saved for a treat. And that was when the third set of knocks came. Closer together. Not angry, just impatient. Mr. Ashwick pushed his chair back, stood, and crossed the room. He didn't open the door, though. He pressed his palm against it and said, "Who's there?" He expected a neighbor's voice, a child giggling, anything human. Silence. He leaned his ear to the wood and felt a cold spot spread through the panel, like the door itself had turned into river water in winter. He stepped back. His breath came out in a thin cloud, though the room was warm. "All right," he said, more to himself. He turned the iron key in the lock and left it there. He told everyone, "Sit, finish your meal. This will pass." They cleared the plates, stacked them by the basin, and did what people do when they want time to move. They kept their hands busy. The house calmed. The clock on the mantel clicked, clicked, clicked. Somewhere outside, a dog barked once and then went quiet, like it had been told a secret it didn't quite like. They banked the fire and went to bed. The youngest child woke just before midnight to the sound of someone humming on the other side of the wall. Not a song she knew, not a church tune. A low, steady sound, like someone walking and counting under their breath. She sat up. The room was cold enough to make her eyes water. She called for her mother, and the room answered with a soft scrape, as if something heavy had been dragged along the hallway. The girl pulled the quilt up, tucked her toes under her knees, and listened. The sound moved away from the door and down the stairs. Morning came late and gray. Mr. Ashwick rose to stoke the fire. He noticed the kitchen window had fogged from the inside and wiped it with his clear sleeve. On the outside sill, the frost had formed into neat lines, as if someone had pressed the edge of a knife into it, over and over, until a shape appeared. A cross. He opened the door to fetch wood. There on the stone step was a small, round cake, burnt black. Hopefully that's not how ours come out tonight. A cross scored across the top, still warm, as if it had come from an oven that didn't sit anywhere on their lane. He called for his wife. She came, saw the cake, and went pale. She didn't reach for it. She didn't speak. She made the sign she hadn't made in years and stepped back into the kitchen. "Someone's playing with us," he said. He picked the thing up between two fingers, as if it might break his skin, and set it on the hearth. The house felt wrong, not loud or violent, just wrong, like an empty church after closing. They decided to go about their day, because work is what people do when they can't fix air in the room. He went to the shed to check the tools. Mother began to heat water. The older children went out to the hen house. The youngest stayed in the doorway, as if a thin string tied her to the kitchen table. By midday, the oldest daughter hadn't returned with the eggs. The boy ran back to fetch her. He found the coop open and the birds calm, as if they were relieved. Just outside the door, there were footprints, bare feet, small, pointing toward the lane. He followed them to the gate and then a little way down the path, until the prints were nothing but shapes in the frost, and then nothing at all. They searched the hedge, the ditch, the field edges. Neighbors joined. No one found a body or even a clue. What they did find was a second cake. It sat on the low stone wall near the lane marker. Same size, same cross, still warm. The village met at the church that evening. They weren't there to argue doctrine. They were there because something had crossed a line and no one knew what to call it. The priest said words about fear and faith. The older farmers talked about the years when small things kept big things away. Someone suggested baking. Tonight. Now. Just in case. The Ashwicks refused. They stood together in the aisle and said that giving in would mean admitting they had done something wrong. They went home to a quiet house and an empty place at the table. The knocks returned after dark, sooner this time. 1, Knock, knock, knock. Then another. Knock, knock, knock. The door shook once in its frame and then stilled. Mr. Ashwick stood on the inside, hands on the key, and felt the cold press through the wood until his palm stung. He kept his hand there anyway, like he could hold the whole thing shut by touching it. Mrs. Ashwick went to check in the bedrooms. The youngest child was sitting on the floor, knees tucked up, staring at the lines someone had scraped into the frost on the inside of her window. 4 lines, like tally mark. "Who did that?" the mother asked. The child didn't answer. She pointed at the corner of the room where a thin trail of soot led up the wall and across the ceiling, as if smoke had changed its mind and crawled instead of rising. No one slept that night. Just before dawn, a neighbor noticed a light in the Ashwick house and went to check on them. He found the door unlocked, the fire cold, and the kitchen set for breakfast. 2 bowls on the table, 2 cups on their sides. Upstairs, beds were made, coats were on pegs, boots lined up on the back door, pairs facing forward like feet ready to go. But no one was home. Out front on the step, there were 3 small round cakes, not burnt this time, baked just right, each with a cross on top and a name pressed into the dough, with the blunt end of a nail. No one had seen anyone deliver them. No one admitted to baking. The village searched the fields again, and the woods and the stream. They found nothing but a 4th cake on the low wall near the lane marker, still warm, cross shining with a little brush of milk. And it didn't have a name. By the time the sun set, the door to the Ashwick house had been closed and latched by neighbors who didn't want to go inside anymore. The priest locked the church and put the key in his pocket. He sat on the front step until the chill went through to his bones. Late that night, a woman who lived 2 cottages down woke to a sound in her kitchen. Not footsteps, not a voice, but the click of a plate being set down. She got up with knife in hand, stepped into the kitchen, and found a soul cake on her table. Same cross, same size, steam lifting in a thin line toward the rafters. She carried it to the door and opened it. The lane was empty. The fog was low. She set the cake on the step and closed the door again, her hand shaking on the latch. In the morning, the cake was gone. For a long time, no one spoke about what happened to the Ashwicks. People avoid naming things that don't fit inside their heads. But the older people kept certain habits even tighter after that. Candles reappeared in windows, plates by door. Souls were counted the way you count blankets before a hard winter. And every year, when October came back around, someone set 3 cakes on the Ashwick step. The cakes showed up where they were needed, or where a debt had been ignored. No one agreed on which. And every few generations, when some new crowd said the old ways were silly and the door could stay closed and the night was just a night, a family would go missing without a mark, a sound, or a fight, and the village would go quiet again. They still don't write the name, but if you hike long enough north of a road that doesn't like to be mapped, you'll find a stone with 4 faint crosses scratched into it, 1 on each side, like a boundary marker for something that isn't land. People leave crumbs there. Not many, just enough. So that's the legend. Maybe it's just a story. Or maybe it's a way to make sure people remembered their dead or didn't forget to be kind to the living who knocked at their door. Either way, let's go downstairs. My cakes should be done. And if they're not perfect, that's fine. They're meant to be plain. I'll keep a few for the house and I'll set one by the door. I mean, not because I think something's out there, but because for some reason, it feels like I should. Oh, and if you try this at home, let me know in the comments below. And if you don't, that's fine too, I guess. I just like the idea that someone somewhere felt remembered tonight. Thank you so much for watching. This is Dani reminding you that every story holds a hint of truth or a shadow of a legend. Until next time, stay curious and keep the lights on. Subscribe.